Hi, this is Mark Davis with Workflow Diagnostics, here to tell you about one of the interesting exercises that we do in our Quality Clinic Lean Six Sigma Foundational Training. This exercise is designed to illustrate the presence of variation in even the simplest of processes, so people can get a sense that, you know what, variation is pretty much natural, and if we don't get a handle on it, it's going to lead to variation in our results and defects that go to the customer. So this is an illuminating exercise for most of the people who go through it, and this is how it works. What I do is I hand out an index card to 3 different volunteers, and I give them each 3 different measuring instruments to use to measure the index card with. And as you can see on this chart here, this is the data that we collect at the end of the exercise. One of the teams had a ruler, one had a tape measure, and another one had a tape measure. I had a tape 1 and a tape 2, as you can see there from the headings. So the first group uses a ruler. There's actually, with that first volunteer that gets the ruler, I recruit the 2 people who are sitting to either side of that person. And so each of them will measure the index card with that ruler, the same index card that I've given them. Same thing with the other 2 tapes. So the person who gets the first tape measure, either person on either side of that person will also measure their index card with the ruler, with the tape measure. And same thing for that third group. The volunteer that raised their hand, they got the tape measure, they get to measure it first, and then the person on either side gets to repeat the process. What I tell them, it's very important. I said, when you get your result, write it down, keep it to yourself. Do not tell anybody about this. Okay, so yes, they're using the same instrument and they're measuring the same piece. And so from that standpoint, they may be considered a team, but they're to do their own work, and I stress that their own work is their own work. And so usually there are 9 participants in this exercise, as you can tell, and at the end of it we review what the different measurements are that they got. And this is a pretty typical result, what you see on this chart here. We had 9 participants, and as you can see from the checklist, or the check marks there below the grid, we actually had 8 different results. Now that includes what it says on the package. That's kind of the kicker here. Once we realized that all of them got, if not all of them, most of them got different results, then I bring out the package and tell them what the package of index cards says. Sometimes what they get matches one of the measures on the index card. A lot of times it does not. So that's just a very surprising element at the very end. But including that, we had 8 different results. So 9 people and a package, 10 total readings on the measurement, if you will, and 8 of them were different. So a lot of variation. So then what we do is we break down the reasons for that variation. And what I typically review with the group is I just go through the 6 M's, the typical 6 M's that we categorize, root cause of variation under, that being man, method, machine, materials, methods, and Mother Nature. You know what? I think I said those wrong. Man, method, machine, Mother Nature, materials, and metrics. There we go. I think I got them all in there. They should roll off by this point after having done this exercise so many times. But those are the typical causes of variation that you can group things under. And so we brainstormed those different causes. And you can see some of those listed here on this sheet. Obviously, they had different tools that they were using. And some of the tools had some shortcomings. The ruler, the first starting hash mark on the ruler actually was not at the very end of the ruler. It was set in some, so that caused some issues. One of the tape measures, the tab on the end of the tape measure wiggled quite a bit, causing some issues with that. And the other tape measure, they just weren't totally sure whether they should start it at the end or if they should start it at one of the inner hashes, and so there was some variation in that. But the tools caused some variation. You also see listed here glasses. Some people were wearing glasses, some were not. Some of the glasses, of course, you may know this from your personal experience, you may have to take them off to actually see things up close, and these little hash marks and little numbers on the rulers may not have been very apparent to these people. Specificity. You know, I wasn't real specific. When I handed out these index cards, and this is intentional, I say, hey, I want you to tell me how big this index card is. And so, they're going to measure how they measure. At the end of the exercise, I actually spring it on them and I say, I already knew this was pretty much a 3x5 card. That's good enough for me that way. I wanted to know how thick it was. So you can imagine their consternation in trying to figure out how thick that card would have been. But so specificity of the instructions is another typical source of variation people pick up on. I mentioned the sway and the wiggle in the measuring tool. Unclear instructions, as I spoke a second ago. Again, so we just reviewed the 6 M's and other factors that can lead to variation. And the main point becomes this. In a simple exercise such as this, measuring an index card, I mean, that's not real complicated. And I'm actually rubbing that in on them as the exercise goes. Hey, guys, this is not real complicated. You're highly trained professionals and whatnot. But in a process supposedly as simple as this, with this much variation in the results, think of the amount of variation that's going to exist and exit from, if you will, a more complicated process like the types that we may find in the common groups I'm doing this with, such as healthcare and others. So it's that's the big takeaway at the end of it. Anyway, you're welcome to use this, something I came up with. You're free to use this and vary it, of course, in any way that you would like with your groups, and I hope it works well for you. Once again, this is Mark Davis, Workflow Diagnostics, and I hope you have a great day.